Welcome back to another episode of Efficio's Transforming Public Procurement Microcast series, where we're continuing to bring you insights to help you better understand the new Procurement Act regulations. In this week's episode, I'm joined by Ana Gheorghe, a consultant from our public sector practice, to discuss everything about dynamic markets. Welcome, Ana. So what can you tell us about dynamic markets under the new Act?
Hi, Jack. Great to be on the series and thank you for having me. So dynamic markets are a new purchasing tool being introduced under the new Act. And alongside frameworks, they're one of the mechanisms that contracting authorities can use to create a pool of pre-approved suppliers before going out to tender. Now, for those familiar with the old regs, they are basically an evolution of dynamic purchasing systems, or DPSs for short.
Okay, great. I suppose they act like framework agreements then?
So yes and no. DPSs act like framework agreements by providing a list of compliant suppliers. However, unlike frameworks, they must be open for new suppliers to join throughout their entire lifetime. DPSs can also only be established to facilitate the procurement of specific goods and services. Dynamic markets, on the other hand, can be created for all procurement types, and they must be open to new suppliers throughout their lifetime.
Okay, that's clear. So how are dynamic markets created then, and how do they operate?
Sure. So any contracting authority can declare its intention to create a dynamic market at any time by publishing what's called a dynamic market notice. A notice must then be republished once the market officially begins and also once it comes to an end.
Okay, so what does the notice actually include?
So the initial dynamic market notice specifies the terms suppliers must satisfy in order to enter the market. And these terms must be proportionate and reasonable in relation to the complexity and nature of the contracts intended to be awarded by the market. It's important to note as well that these terms cannot be altered once this notice has been published or throughout its lifetime.
Thanks, Ana. And once the dynamic market goes live, is there anything else to be aware of?
Sure, so there's a few things to be aware of. Firstly, dynamic markets have no maximum length, but any duration that they must stick to must be specified in the dynamic market notice. There's also a few things to be aware of once the dynamic market goes live. So firstly, there's no limit to the maximum number of suppliers who can join. Tenders intended to be awarded via the market must be published publicly. Make reference to the fact that only members of the market will be considered. However, all new or pending applications to join must then be considered while this tender is open. Contracts are then awarded by referencing a supplier's membership of the market, and fees may be charged to suppliers after they're awarded a contract via the dynamic market.
Okay, thanks, Ana. That was a really great overview of the purchasing tool and how it's evolved from DPSs in the prior regulations. I hope everyone enjoyed today's microcast. As always, please do post any thoughts, questions, or comments in the chat, and get in touch with Ana or myself for future topics you also want to hear about. We'll see you all next week.